Let's get a check now of some of the top business news stories. Kate Moody's here. Hi there, Kate.
Hi, Tom.
Now, the EU and the US looking to put some of their disputes behind them as they launch a new alliance on trade and technology. Tell us more about this.
Well, Brussels had considered trying to postpone this meeting during the fallout over a cancelled submarine deal and the creation of a new military alliance between the US, UK and Australia. But the inaugural meeting of the US-EU Trade and Technology Council has kicked off in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. You can see US Secretary of State Antony Blinken among those leading the discussions there. And the real goal here is to better compete with China. Now, heavyweights from both sides are attending. Blinken, the US Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo, and Trade Representative Catherine Tai. From the EU, the Director of Economic and Trade Matters, Valdis Dombrovskis, and the Head of Digital Policy and Competition Law, Margaret Vestager. Now, on the agenda, how to regulate digital giants, oversee competition in the technology sector, the development and use of artificial intelligence, and boosting the production of microchips. A shortage of those semiconductors, which are largely made in Asia, has affected supply chains around the world. Now, these talks will not be all-encompassing. Issues like the still-standing tariffs on steel and aluminum, for example, are unlikely to be broached, but it could allow them to reset their relationship in other areas. According to Reuters, announcements could include a more unified transatlantic approach to limiting the growing market power of big tech. Well, U.S. lawmakers are scrambling to avoid a partial government shutdown at the end of this week and a default on U.S. debt in mid-October. The U.S. Senate could vote on Wednesday or Thursday on a bipartisan measure which would fund the government through December and avoid a shutdown. The House of Representatives, meanwhile, is preparing for a vote to raise the debt ceiling or extend the Treasury's borrowing capacity and allow it to pay its bills. Both measures need to be passed by both houses of Congress. It is increasingly possible that Democrats could delay Thursday's vote on an infrastructure bill in an effort to compromise with Republicans and avoid a dual fiscal crisis. Long lines of cars are still waiting to fuel up across the UK, even as the petrol crisis begins to ease. The British Energy Minister said plans were still in motion to enlist the military and that soldiers would begin delivering fuel within days. The Petrol Retailers Association, meanwhile, said only 27% of its members reported being dry on Wednesday and that the situation would continue to improve.
We are seeing more deliveries now from the refineries and the terminals. And certainly the idea the government has put forward of introducing military drivers as soon as this weekend, we would certainly welcome, because any additional capacity that can be moved out of the refineries and terminals into our stores and tankage underground will be most welcome.
Well, a number of factors led to that fuel crisis in the UK, including panic buying, Brexit, and the pandemic. But among the main problems is a shortage of truck drivers. The industry is struggling to keep or recruit new workers, and it's a roadblock affecting economies across Europe. Luke Schrager reports.
Over the last week, scenes like this have become common across the United Kingdom. But fuel isn't the problem. Getting it to where it needs to be is. From empty shelves in recent months, fuel's just another symptom of a deeper supply chain crisis, the lack of drivers available after leaving the sector during COVID. And while Brexit has made it far more visible, the UK is far from alone. This French company is representative of some 400,000 drivers missing across the European Union.
On n'arrive pas à recruter des conducteurs aujourd'hui pour assurer notre activité telle qu'elle devrait être. Il nous manque 10% de conducteurs. Mécaniquement, c'est du chiffre d'affaires qui n'est pas là, à peu près dans les mêmes proportions.
Another issue is working conditions, with these drivers in Romania protesting. But even Boris Johnson's offer of temporary visas isn't attracting much enthusiasm.
Bun, îmi oferi un contract pe 3 luni de zile o viză. După 3 luni de zile ce faci? Ce se întâmplă cu mine? Garantează-mi un contract minimum de 5 ani de zile, cu toate condițiile care implică siguranță și atunci automat problema va fi altfel.
That, though, crosses a red line for UK authorities, leaving the government there looking at a 9-month period to train up new truckers and little sign of the systemic change industry representatives think is needed.
Multinational companies must take not short-term approaches like reward drivers with bonuses, but show to companies and transport workers that they're serious now and they're willing to pay for fair transport. And that will create a wave of sustainability.
Even as the EU takes steps to address truckers' grievances over working conditions, there's precious little incentive to help out the UK when staying in Europe could pay off in the long run.
Moving on to some of the day's other business headlines now. Evergrande has raised the equivalent of $1.5 billion by selling part of its stake in Shenzhen Bank. This as the company faces another debt payment today of around $45 million. Evergrande missed a payment last week worth more than $80 million, with no indication that it intends to negotiate with its creditors. Rolls-Royce says all its vehicles will be electric by 2030. The luxury car maker announced the switch as it unveiled its first fully electric model, which will be available in about 2 years' time. And United Airlines has begun the process of firing just under 600 staff members who have refused to be vaccinated against COVID-19. It's less than 3% of its U.S. workforce. The carrier has one of the strictest corporate policies on the issue, with strict limits on medical or religious exemptions. In a memo, the carrier said the terminations were a difficult decision, but that its team's safety remained the top priority. Afghanistan is the world's top producer of opium, which is then funneled into the illegal drugs trade around the world. Last month, the Taliban said it didn't want any narcotics to be produced in the country, and it sent the price of opium through the roof as buyers fear future shortages. James Vecina has more.
The opium trade is flourishing in Afghanistan. Prices have more than tripled since last month, when the Taliban pledged the country wouldn't produce any narcotics. Foreign drug traffickers are panic buying, fearing a possible shortage to come. Some poppy farmers say that they don't grow the flower by choice.
We have no money. There's a water crisis and there have been severe problems in our country for the past 20 years. We don't like opium. I don't want to plant it because I don't want to attract problems. But we don't have any choice.
Afghanistan's the world's biggest opium exporter. The UN estimates that in 2020, 6,300 tons were produced, and over the past years, the industry has accounted for 20 to 30% of the country's economy. The Taliban tried to ban it with little success under their previous rule. If they're to outlaw it once again, part of the task will be providing and convincing the thousands of poppy farmers of a viable alternative. Cut off from most international aid, Afghanistan's economy is collapsing, with the UN warning that 97% of the population could plunge into poverty by next year.
That's all for now, Tom.
Thank you very much indeed for bringing us up to speed. Our business editor, Kate Moody, thank you so much. I'll be back in a few minutes. Do stay with us here on France 24.